I am. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today, Hells. But yeah, let's go ahead and I guess introduce ourselves to the folks we have joining us today. Um, I'll go first. Am I still sharing my screen?
I
I think
don't think
so.
so. No.
Okay, let's go ahead and get some of the
There we
housekeeping in
go.
order. Perfect. So my name is Carlos Calderon. I lead the solutions team here at MetaRouter. I've got a 15 years of advertising and marketing experience, and I'm really excited to talk about data because that is the underpinning of what makes that endeavor really successful at any organization.
Great. And I'm Helen Tanner. I'm the founder of Data Cubed. We are a data agency. We help businesses who have all got the same problem. They've all got disconnected data spread across all different systems and all different platforms, and we help them get it all into one place so they can actually make sense of it. And my background before I founded Data Cube was I worked in public sector and private sector for kind of 20 years, started as a coder, but mostly spent my time in commercial roles in those organizations. So great to be here today.
Oh, it's so great to be speaking with you. And I didn't know that about you being a coder. Now I know why we're simpatico in that way, because code actually is part of the engine of getting data places. So let's go ahead and kick things off because I'm excited to have this dialogue with you today, and I just want to I guess cover the main points that you should be able to take away today. We're going to demystify what big data really means. You hear these terms thrown around in your workplace, and if they make sense to you, great. That's not for you, but we're going to cover some basics. We're also going to talk about what's causing some of the consolidation and coordination that is happening in the space, specifically around data, and the sense that it's accelerating, or at least beginning to gain some critical mass. We're also going to talk about what's involved in creating a data strategy and executing a data strategy with the partners and stakeholders that you need to have inside of your organization. So even if you feel that you have a data strategy, this is, I promise, going to be worth your time, because while it is going to be it's such a large topic. We simply don't have time to talk about the entire scope of everything related to having a data strategy in 1 hour. Although I'm sure Hells and I could probably sit here for hours talking about it. You've got things to do today, and I'm sure you'll probably want to unpack a little further what we discuss. So I guess let's just jump right into it. Hells, do you have anything else you'd like to add about our conversation today?
No, I think you're right. There's so much we can cover. So we will bounce in and out of things and see where we go, won't we, Carlos?
Yes, we will. Okay, well, so let's get the basics out of the way. Let's talk about how most people probably know that their company has data somewhere, and that there's probably a team organized around creating an accessible, actionable, accurate data warehouse. So help for the layperson. What's the difference between a data lake house? I'm sorry, a data lake, a data warehouse, and I've even heard it called a data lake house, which I think is funny. But help us understand some of the jargon that goes into this.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard the data lake house thing, but yeah, that should be a thing. I've heard data swamp. I mean, I think firstly, there's loads of jargon out there, loads of it all over the data world, and I think for most business leaders, I think it's really important. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about all these terms. There's loads of jargon. Don't let your tech people bamboozle you with all these tech terms. And I think when you look at data lakes. Let me give you my short introduction, and I'm sure there'll be people on this call who might kind of challenge my definitions. But for me, a data lake is where you chuck all your raw data, you just chuck it all in. Whereas a data warehouse is more structured and filtered and processed data, where you've got it set up. It's kind of more in a structure that you would find in a real life warehouse, and often used for analytics. And then you've got things like data marts, which people kind of refer to, which are normally a small subset of data, And then you've got like databases, really common, and normally databases are used for kind of operational kind of processing. So yeah, you've got all these terms, and then you can throw in the kind of big data and non-big data. Is it big data and small data? Who knows, right? And there's all different ways to define big data, you know, with the 5 V's: volume, variety, velocity, and then I forget the rest, you know. But really, you know, if with big data, I'd say if you're collecting data every second or every minute, you've probably got big data. If you're not, and you're looking at monthly, weekly, annual kind of data collection, I'd say you're not in the big data sphere. But the reason I say don't get hung up on the data jargon is because at the end of the day, it's all data, and your process in terms of a data strategy will be exactly the same. The only thing that will be different is your data architects will recommend different tools depending on the volume and the velocity of your data, whether it's fast or big or small. They'll be recommending different tools and solutions. But as business leaders, it doesn't matter. Don't let them bamboozle you with the jargon. That's what I'd say.
That's so true. I think sometimes we get into conversations, especially in meetings, where the abstraction of some of these terms kind of blows right past people. So that thank you for adding that color. I feel similarly about that nebulous, fluid like lake term, and the more defined, cataloged, and disciplined, idea of a warehouse. So that's a really fantastic way to describe it. I wish that I had had that back pocket back in 5 years ago when we were taking on-premises data from servers sitting in rooms to the cloud. A quick question about the data lake warehouse concept. Is most of it all in the cloud, or are you finding that there's some hybrid aspects to that?
I think most businesses we speak to are in the cloud or moving very quickly to the cloud. I think the on-premise stuff does seem to be for legacy reasons, and from setting up the businesses 5, 10, 15 years ago, when on-premise was a better solution and cloud wasn't as fully formed or as wide scale in it as a solution. But nowadays, I think it's hard to find really good use cases for on-premise versus cloud. Cloud is so scalable and flexible and low cost. So yeah, mostly cloud in my experience.
Well, it sounds like we might be even jumping ahead a little bit, because that sounds to me like if you're moving from on-premises storage of data on computers to the cloud, there's likely some strategy behind that. So for folks that are in the midst of doing that, or who have already done that, that's part of a data strategy. Do most people that you encounter usually have one? And if they don't, is it well defined? Or if they think they do, is it well defined?
So most businesses I speak to either confess. Sometimes it's a bit like a confessional when I start speaking to them, and maybe it's on the second or third or fourth time I chat to them. Normally it's a source of a bit of a shame. We either haven't got a data strategy. I can't believe we haven't got a data strategy, and sometimes it's we have got a data strategy, but oh my goodness, it's old, it's not fit for purpose, it's on some dusty shared drive somewhere. So in my experience, very rarely, if ever, has anyone said to me, we've got this nailed, Hells, we've got an amazing data strategy, it's fit for purpose, it's live, it's always up to date. So I think I would reassure anyone who sat here going, I haven't got this nailed, to go, that's the norm rather than the exception. So yeah, and I think also people get a bit hung up again, it's jargon, right? What is a data strategy? Is it a 100-page document or a 1-page document? And the answer is, well, it could be either, right? It depends on your business and which one is fit for purpose. And in my mind, a data strategy is just it's your vision of where you want to get to and your plan of how you're going to get there. That's it. And it should be fit for purpose for your organization. Should influence how big or small or what format it's in or what headers it's got and those types of things. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think that's a really great way to think about it. It's a plan at an organizational level. I think a lot of individual groups within an organization use data in their own sphere of influence and importance to what they care about. Um, what's different from having data execution and data organization from having a cohesive cross-organizational plan? What are the questions that you ask? Because I'm sure people say, yeah, I've got data, and yes, I have people that work on it, and yes, I have a strategy around it. But when you start peeling the onion, what are the questions that make them go, maybe I don't actually have that cohesive organizational level strategy? What are the bullets that define what that should have?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two thoughts on it. One is, what you often end up seeing, whether you've got a data strategy in writing or not, is random acts of data or random acts of digital, if you like, and people might dress this up as being opportunistic or entrepreneurial or those kind of positive words, but often it's because there's a vacuum, and in that vacuum, someone finds a nice piece of kit, or someone comes and presents something, and you just go down a path because it looks new and innovative and and exciting and all those types of things. So you often see a symptom of not having a properly embraced strategy is random acts of digital innovation and data stuff that's just done. The other kind of question to kind of really probe into that is your data strategy fit for purpose, is around, are your people in your organization using data to make decisions? Rather than just having pretty pictures and that kind of ego boosting of seeing numbers on charts go up and things like that, are the people in your business actually making decisions to stop, start, and change things because of the data that's in their hands and at their fingertips? Because we're in an age now where the age of making all our business decisions by gut feel should be over. We should be at least taking account of data in as many of our business decisions as possible. So those would be the two areas I'd be probing to go, is your data strategy fit for purpose, rather than do you have one?
Yeah, I think I'm feeling so many emotions about what you're talking about here, because what you're describing is the difference between reporting and historical look back of what happened. And oh, that's nice to know. We did great, or we did okay, or we did poorly. But the outcomes that you want to drive, or the decisions or the questions that the good reporting typically asks, usually require you to dig deeper and find out what made that graph pivot up into the right or down into the right. The idea of making decisions off of your data is I think, part of what's driving a lot of this necessity for companies to really organize it at the highest levels of an organization.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Totally agree.
So when you go about when you find a company who's realizes that their data strategy is either old or could be improved, or even if it's good and they need to have the flexibility to incorporate those random acts of digital brilliance. And I love that kind of innovation where that can happen within silos within an organization, that being able to incorporate that. How do you go about recommending step 1, 2, 3? How do you get started on either revisiting or creating a data strategy?
So I think the first thing I often kind of say is, walk away from the data, right? Put down the data, walk away from the data, like don't, because otherwise you could easily drown in it, right? If you start with the data, you could easily drown in it, and you'll find out tons of super exciting and interesting things, no doubt. You'd find loads of patterns and trends, but would they actually help you, right? So first thing is walk away from the data, put down the data. And where I'd always start is the business requirements. So if you look at your data strategy, in order for it to be effective, it needs to enable the business. and therefore your data strategy should be really closely aligned to your business strategy. So if you're in a point of your business is all about acquisition and growth, or maybe your business is all about retention and conversion, or maybe it's all about improving the customer experience because your market is really competitive in that area and using data to do that. Depending on what your business strategy is and what you're trying to achieve, your data should be lining up behind that to help kind of power your business strategy and to inform your business strategy as well. So that's what I would be saying, is start with what are your business requirements, what are your business goals, then look at okay, well, what data, what metrics, what do we need to understand in order to inform those business requirements and inform those goals. And this could be really different, right? So so you could have a particular business requirement that might be to look at who are your most valuable customers within a business, and you might want to look at that monthly or quarterly. That's a very different business requirement than looking at how are our machines performing across the country, and how well are they performing for our clients, and you might want that every second or every kind of minute interval. So your business requirements will then determine the next steps in this process, which will be to map your data to and work out what data you need. You certainly won't need all of it. You will only need some of it. Connect your data together, process it, cleanse it so that you can actually do something with it. Normally kind of undervalued area, or very time consuming area. Analyzing your data and then visualizing it in some way so that your user can actually make sense of it. But doing all of those things with that really clear focus on your business objective and your business requirement, and making the data work for you rather than going and kind of drifting off into kind of a sea of a lake house or a swamp of data.
Yeah, I totally get the idea of wanting to collect and store everything that you can, but you can get mired in I like how you said data swamp, of which kind of sends you down a path of analysis paralysis, which we like to throw around. But also too, there's these disconnected understandings around what data is in this data set and how can I interpret that alongside some other data that I do understand. So that what you said, I think, resonates tremendously with a lot of businesses who are having to adapt not only their strategies and their go-to-market and their customer initiatives that have really been forced. I think this past year and a half has forced a lot of companies to modify how they really go to market and leverage their business and their data. So an example that resonates with me is marketing needs to know if they're actually moving the needle on the bottom line numbers. And too often the real sales data is somewhat divorced from the conversion data that some of the platforms collect and don't necessarily deduplicate. So there's this desire to get two different groups, which is oftentimes the finance and sales department, data linked or correlated to what the activities are going on in a different group. But there are a number of use cases in which I'm sure you probably can rattle off 10 that there's two departments with different data. Neither really understands the other. And so centralizing the data in what we're calling a data warehouse is the beginnings of that kind of collaborative data strategy that you're discussing, right?
Yeah, and being really purposeful about it. So, I think, it's very easy to get lost within a data strategy and to focus on the process. We've got this beautiful data strategy document. Look at us, it's amazing. It's beautiful. But does it actually enable your business? So you've got to, as a kind of a business leader or a data leader, you've got to focus on the result of what you're doing, the outcome, the impact, rather than the process. and the data strategy is just the process, and having charts and bringing things into one place is just the process. What actually does it enable you to do? What decisions does it enable you to make? So being really purposeful about that is really key.
Yeah. That sounds really simple to do. I think I think what we've been talking about sounds intuitive. It sounds simple, but keeping your hypothesis and your questions and your business outcomes in mind, identifying which numbers and results you actually want to look at to help you make those decisions. I think everyone tries to do that, but it's difficult, specifically within a larger organization where the silos of data are, you don't know what you don't know, it sits somewhere else, right? So how do you align? What's the best way to align a cross-functional team around a common goal? Because it sounds like it's easy to do in concept, but there's a lot that's probably involved. How do you see, what do you recommend there?
Yeah, I think the technology decisions are easy. Anyone can go and research a piece of kit and buy it with their credit card and bring it into an organization and go, ta-da! I've built this amazing thing. Here you go, everybody. Our problems are all solved. And as any of us will know from working in a business, that's the start, right? It's the people that will make this complex and hard. I'm sure all of us have worked on projects where we've had a release of some amazing tool and then it hasn't got traction and it ends up just dying or being replaced by another amazing product at some point in future. So it's the people that make it hard. And then there are a couple of dimensions to that. As people, we're all very complex, and we have a lot of fear and anxiety, and there'll be people who will be threatened by data showing them up. They might worry that the numbers that might have been hidden before now suddenly might expose them. There'll be people who will feel that technology is not for them because of their age or their specialism within a business, and it's not their thing. They're not spreadsheet people, they're not data people. So you end up with lots of fear and anxiety. You also end up with politics, office politics and silos, and people are kind of wrangling into different positions. So people make it hard. So the way I always encourage our businesses, and I've worked within businesses and as a kind of consultant to other businesses, is start with the inspiration first. Start with that winning their hearts and minds at a belief level of get them excited around the potential for how it can help their business, help all of their roles, get them win that kind of hearts and minds right at the beginning. Then go into training mode. And as business leaders, you do not need to know everything about data, quite the opposite, but you need to know enough to do your job. So there's different tiers of training down to the kind of detailed level. And then there's, training, again, being just the beginning, not the end. So then there's supporting people once they've had that training. And then there's an element of carrot and stick, often driving, creating this data-driven culture. And I say carrot and stick because some of it should be incentivizing and celebrating great uses of data in driving smarter decision making or quicker decision making. And then sometimes there's a bit of a stick to make things mandatory and 3-line whips in large organizations. So that those would be the things that I would be recommending to a business. But absolutely, I use this phrase a lot. The technology is the start of your project. It's the culture change that will require the weeks and months and years of continuous day-to-day effort.
Yeah.
Is that what you see too?
Yeah, I was gonna. I think you said it pretty succinctly. It starts with culture and the willingness to collaborate and embrace having a greater shared understanding. Centralizing and democratizing data isn't without its debates. And I think what you're referring to is having sponsorship and support at the highest levels within an organization to really not only encourage that kind of cross-organizational collaboration, but also kind of mandate it. I like that carrot and stick example, but often what I've seen, and my examples are somewhat limited to this to the sphere of marketing, but one thing that I've seen was advertising has one chart and it's ticking along just fine. Then all of a sudden, doof. Well, if you're only looking at that data set and not this other data set, which tells you that perhaps the website was down for a number of hours, it's hard. You're trying to deduce what happened and you have an incomplete picture. There's oftentimes variables that are lurking in other data sets that, without knowing that those exist and what they mean, it's difficult to incorporate potentially a greater learning that can be shared across both groups. So let's talk about what the makeup of these internal partners and stakeholders look like. And understanding that every organization is different. If you're a small outfit to a large enterprise, the sophistication and diversity of roles is, I'm sure, going to be different for everyone. But talk to me a little bit more about why a data strategy isn't just about having a team of analysts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's kind of two dimensions to this. One is, within your data team, and then the other one is outside of your data team and in the business. And the within your data team element, I always think as a minimum, there's 5 skills that you'll require. And sometimes that's 5 people. Sometimes it's, a little bit of 5 people. Sometimes it's, lots of one kind of area, but there's 5 skills that I think, and you never find one person who can do all these 5 skills. And if they say they can, I would question them very, very, very strongly. But you need a data consultant. So you need someone who is commercially savvy enough to understand what the business needs and what business levers can be pulled and pushed, and can understand how the business makes and saves money, and what the customer experience is, and can translate that into data and technology requirements. So you need someone who, sometimes these people are called data translators, like a connection between the business and the technology, the connection between the commercial people and the techies. That's a crucial role. The next one you need is like a data architect. So someone who can look at the current technology stack, who knows what's available on the market, and can give you a kind of understand your business requirements enough to say, look, I recommend you use these tools. And there are so many tools and options, from buying things kind of off the shelf, buying a product off the shelf, to handcrafting your own. So there's lots of different flavors in there, and you need a data architect to decide what's right for the business need. Then you need a data engineer, third one, data engineer, to wrangle all your data, cleanse it, process it, make it actually something that you can use, and brings it all together. A highly underrated role and absolutely crucial. Then you need someone to visualize the data. Now, sometimes that's called a data visualizer. Sometimes it's called a business intelligence developer or dashboard developer. It could be different types of titles, but you need someone who is very good at not just making loads of pretty charts, but actually giving the user something they can use, and something that only tells them what they need to know. And then the 5th one is a data scientist. And you don't need a data scientist for every project. So I see quite a lot of people are going, well, we'll recruit a data scientist. But a data scientist won't do a great job unless they've had a data engineer wrangle all their data and process it for them. So those are the kind of 5 skills I think I would encourage anyone to be looking at for a data project. And as I say, you might not need them all full time, but you'd need flavors of those skills. So that's within the team. And then outside of the team, in my experience, I've only seen data projects work where you've got executive or board level advocacy and sponsorship and endorsement. I've never seen anyone successfully at mid-level drive a data transformation up and across and down in all directions. I've never seen that happen. And that's from being in those organizations and working with them. That's being across public sector, private sector, B2B, B2C. I would say it's absolutely crucial that you have executive level sponsorship, because this is it's cross-departmental. It's going to involve money and investment. It needs people to think of that investment as a return. So whilst your cost might be in your technology area, your return might be in sales and marketing. So you need people to be really thinking across all kind of these areas. So those are the areas that I'd be considering, and making sure that I've got in that team like a really strong internal team with those skills, and then the executive sponsorship.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I think that executive sponsorship, and I know we've talked about it twice now, I think is so incredibly important, because I'm going to add a little bit more color about the underlying, well, the hidden benefits of making sure that there is buy-in from the level of the business that can really move the mountains that need to be moved. Because there's a lot of external forces that are causing executives anxiety to really align the troops and tackle not only the risk that's associated with the data, but actually being able to develop successful strategies from the data that they have so much of. You know, whether it's monetizing it or actioning on it, there's so much else that's involved. But I think with external forces like privacy legislation, and, you know, I think the changes in the technology space, the things that need to move often also require information security, IT security, legal, to make sure there's a data lineage and all kinds of plumbing in and out of an organization, which I don't know if this has been your experience, but the lubrication of getting a process or getting a plan into place, you know, turning a strategy into reality, is often enabled by an executive. They're able to remove the obstacles, and that's what they do. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And the other thing I've seen, Carlos, is and maybe you've seen the same, is because it seems hard, and because you need that executive sponsorship, and because it's cross-departmental, people get into that, oh goodness, we'll do that next year. You know, it's too freaking hard. We'll put it off and we'll delay it, and we've got all these other projects to do. And you know, you've got these human emotions in there around, you know, being fearful and of disrupting everybody and breaking down those silos is really, really hard. You get a lot of that kind of stuff. And the way that I talk to that is that the only truth when it comes to data is that your data today is the easiest it will ever be to sort out, because it's only getting more complex. You're only collecting more data. You're compounding your problem every single day, because you're literally collecting data every single second and minute and an hour across your organization. So as hard as it feels today, this today will literally be the easiest it will ever be to sort it out. So and sometimes that resonates, but often there's this big kind of juggernaut of, this seems really, really hard.
I think the advice that our mothers have given us is always the hardest to take. It's you might as well do what's hard now, because it's just going to be worse later. And I don't know if this is necessarily true anymore, but I've routinely heard that we've collected more data as a species in the last 2 years than we did in the previous millennia before it. And talking about, you know, how we collect and kind of pack rat data, and have so many devices and systems and requirements for getting data into our business, and being able to understand all of these discrete touch points of how we're doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this sounds also, I think what we're saying here is that with a strategy and executive sponsorship and the right roles to really help not only lay the foundation, but build the framework and install all of the utility that's required, you also need librarians and you know, architects to help really translate the information and standardize the information so that it's available to each group and they understand what it means. So it sounds easy enough. Where do you find, once you've suggested the data strategy and the approach to doing it, where do you find most organizations wanting to roll up their sleeves and get started?
It's pretty consistently always in two areas. So it's always a case of, let's start by combining customer data with finance data. So that might be combining your CRM or your e-commerce or whatever it might be, or your customer data with some financial data. And the reason that comes up is because often the most important business question is who, well, two most important business questions: who are our most profitable customers? Where do we make the most money? And with the kind of, you know, with the kind of right cost, because let's get more of those, let's retain those, let's double down on those, let's go out and attract more of those types of people. And then the flip side of that coin is, which of our customers are loss making or time consuming or the least profitable, and let's either move them on and choose not to serve them, or convert them into being profitable customers. And you know, in organizations, you know, that can kind of that might be the language they use in a smaller kind of SME, but sometimes they might be talking about customer lifetime value or recency frequency value. There's all these different acronyms. They might be talking about churn and retention, you know, all those types of things. And that's often where the priority is this: our customers and our finance data is separate. We need to get them together. Then you've got things in there that you need to deal with around getting unique identifiers, so you can match clients from one system to the other. But pretty much always that's where we start. What do you find with the projects you work on?
You know, I couldn't agree with you more. I think starting with your customer and understanding how valuable they are, who you should fire as a customer, who you should hire as a customer, and how to retain them is an incredibly important thing. I don't know about, I think last time I checked, most businesses were in the business of making money, and the people that give them the money are the customers. And so I think whether you're in B2B or in the B2C space, being able to correlate the real results and outcomes that drove that customer's either purchase or engagement with your company brand or service is incredibly important to understand. And connecting the real financial data with the real customer data is step one, because it unlocks so many other avenues of analysis. And I think probably the thing that I see most, to build on what you've been saying, is for example, in the world of, I think most businesses allow you to transact with them online. That's typically the point of sale. It's not always the point of sale, but if it's not, or if there's a hybrid of digital and non-digital sales points, that's even more of a reason to join the two worlds of data, your customer and your sales data. But specifically around digital, understanding the confluence of touch points on a website or an app, or the digital channels that you use to connect with your customers, analyzing that against that real data, customer and financial data, helps kind of illuminate so many avenues in which you can action upon that. I think that's probably why I'm seeing a proliferation of customer data platforms and identity-based connectivity out in the market space. Everything from advertising to marketing. But I think, again, part of what's driving a lot of that is radically changing customer behaviors, incredibly dynamic marketplace and competitive, landscape. Companies wanting to assert some sort of competitive advantage over their peers or the competitors in the space. All of that is really oriented around understanding this world of data that's elsewhere, that's usually in a silo from what really matters to your business, which is your customer and your financials. So that's if I could make a short plug, that's literally what MetaRouter helps enable, is kind of the data streaming of website activity across anything that you need to inform, whether it's an internal system or an external system. That connectivity, that linkage, is part of the standardizing that you need to do as part of your data strategy. So that it resonates with me. But again, I guess, perspective of one, because I've been in advertising for a long time, but it was really primarily in the retail space. And I have been in the B2B space, but everyone has some sort of event that they deem as meritorious, that they want to get more of, whether that's a lead sign up or a subscription or a purchase or a form fill. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
So this idea of having a single source of truth where everything kind of either is centralized or connected. Did I just lose my video? Oh, I'm back.
Yeah.
Okay. A single source of truth sounds like a utopian promised land. Is the goal to be able to have a single source of truth?
I think I love the phrase single source of truth, because I think everyone gets what you mean. When you say, look, we talk about problems that we see in businesses, and we say, look, every business we speak to has got their finance data over here, their customer data there, their social media there, their call center data here, and that resonates really well. And we say, look, wouldn't it be great to have a single source of truth? And there's this kind of acceptance. Oh my goodness, that would be amazing, right? In practical terms, you don't need to. All of those different systems are probably best of breed systems. So you don't want to get rid of those systems and replace it with something that isn't best of breed for each of those different purposes. Equally, you've got tons of data within those systems, and you don't need to take all of the data out of those systems into a separate kind of data place. Let me not use any more jargon. Separate data area for analytics. So you definitely don't want to take all of the data and just put it in another place. This is where I kind of go back to what I was talking about earlier. You start with those business requirements or those use cases, and then follow them through. So if you want to be looking at who are your most profitable customers, you can probably look at that over a monthly kind of basis. You don't need to know who was your most profitable in the last minute. So you'd be looking at a different level of granularity of that type of data. Whereas if we work with a kind of food manufacturer, you want to know how many dishes have we made in the last minute. So you do need real-time data. So it's a matter of looking at your business requirements will determine your frequency of data for one thing, and then once frequency is just one layer, right? Kind of how often do you want that data, and then separately how you might kind of aggregate things up. You might not actually want to look at customer level data. You want to know how all of the customers using a certain product are using it, and what is their kind of anonymized aggregated behavior. So I would go back to this: what is your business requirement? And pull the data you need to answer that business requirement into a single source of truth, so that you can answer those business questions specifically. And every business is different, and every business use case will be different. So I would follow it through in that kind of flow of an approach, rather than trying to do some big bang single source of truth, getting all your data into one place that could take years and years and years and cost a fortune. I'd be looking at phases of work. Phase 1, let's focus on this use case. Phase 2, let's focus on the next one. That would be my approach.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Every time that I've encountered one of the experienced data professionals that understands most of what we've been talking about, they somewhat roll their eyes and maybe even scoff at the idea of a single source of truth. And I insist that we're not talking about a single table of everything. We're talking about understanding which metrics are real and matter. And I think you've said it just beautifully, because understanding what matters to the business, and we'll use it. I'm going to keep referring to some examples that I'm familiar with, but I'm sure you've got more. The idea of saying, here are the clicks that I have from my email, and here are the clicks that I got from Facebook, and here are the clicks that I got from paid search. Well, you look at all those clicks together and you try and see how many customers did I drive to my website. Well, at the end of the day, the website data is probably more accurate then looking at these pockets of data. And I think another example I think that probably everybody kind of would agree with is that if you're looking at transaction revenue, every platform's kind of capturing their own, and sometimes that's duplicative. You're looking at one purchase that's been captured in 4 systems. Well, the only one that actually matters out of those 4 systems is your financial data, right? So I think that idea of a single source of truth requires all of that that team data discipline to be able to properly define it, properly share it, so to make sure that the data is not only accurate, that's step 1, that it's accessible, so that the finance and the marketing and the sales and the customer service all have access to that data set that they need, and that it's actionable for them, right? So being able to throw away what you don't need and keep what matters, right? And that idea about clicks, you don't necessarily care about engagements because that's a different thing in a different system that may not necessarily be tied to a real truthful metric that your business actually cares about.
Yeah, and I just want to flag that if anyone missed it, that was Carlos's 3 A's there, which I've stolen, the actionable, accessible, and accurate. So so I think that's brilliant. So if any of you missed that.
Well, I think it's a concept that you embody too. I don't know why you've chosen data cubed, but that to me is the 3 A's. I think it's just, you're welcome to use it. I think this idea that we're talking about today requires a village of understanding throughout an organization, and being able to articulate things that people can take away with them is incredibly important. So, let's talk a little bit more to the advanced person who's dialed in, who wants to understand what's going on. Assuming that you're pretty far along on your data journey, why did we title today's webinar, "Your Data Strategy Needs to Change"? What are some reasons that someone might need to adapt or change?
Yeah, I think, the main thing there is that because your business is changing all the time, and because technology is changing, and because customers are changing all the time, no business ever stays the same. Or where you see businesses that stay the same, they'll be going out of business, or they'll be disrupted. We've all seen that happen with businesses that haven't evolved and changed. So I think there's potentially kind of 3 different things that could change, that would influence your data strategy to change. One might be things that are internal to your business. You might choose to diversify or offer a new product, or change from it all being about retention to all being about acquisition. There could be internal things within your business that will change, that should therefore influence your data strategy because the business strategy has changed. That's number 1. Second one, kind of things that are outside of your business, things outside of your control that might change, such as you might get new competitors, new disruptors. Your customers might change, their expectations of what you're looking for might change, or there might be regulatory change or legal change. There could be things that you've got no control of that will influence you. And then the third one, technology is changing at such a pace, goodness me. Things that might have been right even a year ago, yet alone 5-10 years ago, could well be the wrong technology solutions that you would choose right now. Because there may be something out there now that's slicker, quicker, and cheaper, because the pace of technological change is just phenomenal. So those were the things that I would be thinking of. That means your data strategy should be live and challenged and critiqued all of the time, not a kind of a one and done. We've done it. Thanks very much.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. It's a living thing that needs to be watered and cultivated, because it's changing all the time. And I love how you said the digital, how did you phrase it? You said the digital inspiration, or the digital accidental digital. Yeah, no, earlier we were talking about
the random acts of digital.
Yeah, being able to bottle that lightning and then push it up and out, so that there's either an ability to leverage or act on that, but also knowledge share. Those are huge reasons to reevaluate your data strategy. And so making this kind of a practical thing that you can ask yourself, because I think you gave some wonderful examples. I want to return to our presentation for just a moment. I know we've got a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that we leave some time for questions in case there are any. And I should be sharing my screen now. So the three things that we hoped we covered to some degree today for you are what is big data and how does it really work? What's driving some of the consolidation and collaboration of businesses, and who needs to be involved in making your strategy, not only designing it, but also executing it. So let's talk about some questions for the person that says, I've got this, I've memorialized my data strategy. It actually is somewhat dynamic. We are able to, incorporate some things. Really, what are these questions that we think are what you can ask yourself, kind of doing an internal audit, not only of your team, but of your organization. And so, Hels, could you walk us through the thought process for these questions?
Yeah, I think that the first one is, so is data enabling your business more than it's hindering your business? And I think this comes from my experience of talking to business leaders, and pretty much the thing that drives action is the pain of data rather than the opportunity of data. So by that, I mean that data is hindering their business because they will say things to me like, I don't even know how many freaking customers we've got, Hels, or I don't know who our most profitable customers are, or, I should know where we're performing better and those types of things, but I don't. We're just bumbling along, and I'm asking very basic business questions, and it's taking weeks for me to get an answer. And then when I do get an answer, I've got conflicting truth. I've got someone telling me something from these figures over here and someone else telling me something from these figures over there. So this is all about, really, data should be enabling you, not hindering you, is it? Yeah. And that's the question to you, to the audience. And the next one is, even if you knew you were going to get some amazing insight from some magical data that was going to be sorted for you tomorrow, would your business, does it have the culture, the capability, the desire to actually make a data-driven decision off the back of that and change something about your business? So this is quite a cultural one. Even if you had something magical coming, would your business actually act on it? And then the last one is, really something for you to think about in terms of, and coming back to that point I said earlier around, it's the result that counts. It's not the process of having a data strategy, it's the impact and the result of it. So our question for you is, when was the last time you actually used data to stop, start, or change something? When was that? Was that last week? Was that last month? Was that last year? Or perhaps never?
Oh, these are strong indictments, I think, for people. And I'm sure I would say that most organizations struggle to incorporate new data and interpret it, share it, and act on it. It's an incredibly difficult procedural endeavor. And so I think what you just talked about is something that I encounter quite a bit in the data streaming service space, which is what MetaRouter lives in. We have tremendous data points that we can provide and connect, but there's a gulf of misunderstanding or perhaps knowledge gaps or opportunities between the groups that enable the data for the business and the folks that are needing to action on it. There's a bridge that needs to be built, and that's ultimately what data strategies help enable. I think that these are some fantastic questions to ask yourself, and to challenge your organization how to act on these, how to think better and more specifically on what you want to achieve, instead of spending the time and the energy looking at the past and trying to understand what happened. looking forward and seeing what action does my business need to take with this information? And the opportunity cost is not just the time, money, and people that's put into that space of reporting and historical lookbacks and kind of that regimented business as usual data analysis. It's the opportunity cost of what could I have done, or what money could I have earned if I'd freed up those resources to really think about these signals of data that help me make better decisions in every avenue of the business. Hels, this has been a fantastic amount of time talking about data, and I feel like it flew by. I know for folks who are dialing into an hour-long web conference or webinar, this can be a bit overwhelming, but I want to see if there are any questions. If you have them, please ask them in the chat.
Yeah, I think we've got one here saying, what was the third type of data role that I described? So let me repeat them. So number one is data consultant. Number two is data architect. Number three is data engineer. And that for me is the person who, probably a coder, very, very comfortable in the code, and will do the wrangling, whether they're using Python or using different tools, but wrangling all that data together, processing it, collecting it, combining, matching it, absolutely crucial role, that third role, the data engineer. Then a data visualizer was the fourth one, or a BI developer, if you call it such thing. And then the fifth one was the data scientist. So, I'd almost consider them like a kind of, you can dial each one up and down on like an equalizer, graphic equalizer or something like that, if that's an analogy that echoes. You don't need all of them full time on a project, but pretty much every project you're going to need that third one, the data engineer.
Great question. Okay. Sorry for missing that question in the chat earlier. I was looking at the wrong window. Thank you for your patience as we got, circled back to that. I don't believe I see any other questions. And so I think we will adjourn early and let people have their few minutes to get a glass of water and have a bio break before their next meeting. Hels, I just want to say it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I feel like we should just continue talking, but I hope this was informative for everyone. Hels, any final thoughts?
No, I thoroughly enjoyed it, Carlos. So thank you ever so much for your time and sharing this with me. And we just say to the audience, obviously they can follow up with either of us, can't they, separately? And we can talk about your specific data strategy, challenges or opportunities, or share some of our experience with you. So drop us a line or connect with us on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to do that, won't we, Carlos?
Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you, and happy Wednesday, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.